All right, we're back. It's been a week. We had a little rest. We had some odds and ends, and it was the 4th of July. Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo back with you live on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. Mark, how was your 4th of July?
Relatively quiet. Lots of fireworks around here. I mean, tons and tons of fireworks. So, and we're old, we're retired. So we don't have to go out and spend money on fireworks. We just go out in the front yard and watch everybody else, and that's basically what happened. We went outside, we watched the neighbors' kids play with their fireworks. I'm telling you, man, fireworks have changed since I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was like sparklers and the fountains and piccolo Pete's and things like that. But out here out west, anything that exploded or left the ground was flat out illegal. And now people are buying, 4-inch mortars and launching things in the air and Roman candles and stuff like that. And I'm like, holy hell, you know, I don't know, when did that start?
It's been around here for a while, but not everybody could get their hands on it because it is expensive too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's a
Yeah,
lot of money can be spent on fireworks,
yeah.
But still, if I had it to spend, I'd do it too. And I know a couple of people, they save up all year long and they buy fireworks twice a year, once for 4th of July and once for New Year's.
Well, um, so you did have lots of fireworks.
Oh yeah, bunches of fireworks.
And but it was relatively, you said, but it was a quiet night and whatnot, you said.
Well, it was a quiet day. We didn't go out and do anything. I mean, we don't, we're not the party type. We're older, we're retired. We stay home and we just wait for sunset and then go outside and watch the kids have fun. That's further confirmation of my theory that holidays are for kids.
See what you guys should do. See, you're saying all that, scrap all that. You should jump in the Jeep, toss the frickin' top back, haul butt into town at 12:15 at night, just before the club, the techno club gets hopping, and you bust open the doors and you lambada on the frickin' bar all the way down to the last corner seat, and you just rock it that evening, listening
Well,
to techno.
well, there's a couple of things wrong with that scenario.
There's a lot of stuff wrong with that.
The first one is this is an old cow town, man. There is nothing techno about it. We got a Cracker Barrel that made the news. All right.
You might have to make some adjustments. So instead of a club, it could be the Cracker Barrel. Instead of dancing,
Yeah. Yeah. Group swarmed the Cracker Barrel and sat in all the rocking chairs for a half an hour and wouldn't leave. Yeah.
yeah, Wild
That would
Night at
make
the Cracker
and
Barrel.
that would make the news here. That's how dumb we are.
Couple burst into a Cracker Barrel and sat on all the rocking chairs in a
Right.
wild night of abandon.
Really. Forget the decaf, Lucinda. We's drinking regular coffee. Yee-haw! You know. The other thing wrong with it is the Jeep is a hard top. So if I threw the top off, we'd have to get a new Jeep. That's not
Um,
something I want to go through.
well, it's funny. So this was your evening. Here, for the first time in my life,
Hmm.
there was like two or three fireworks,
Hmm.
and the rest of the evening, nothing.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Well, these people here, I don't get it because they'll start shooting off fireworks at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
They usually would do that here, but what I think, I don't know what it is, but um, when the COVID thing happened,
Yeah.
in that year that everything stopped, like
Yeah.
it was over,
Mhm.
maybe 2 years ago, I forget now. Just back when they blew up, like half the smoke was everywhere. It was
Yeah.
like people were like exercising all that angst and stuff. And then last year there was fire, and then but this year two or
Wow.
three and nothing. And I was expecting it. I was expecting my
Mhm.
dog to get all bothered,
Mhm.
but none of it. And I think it has to do. I hate to say, but it has to do with, this is my thinking. Things are tough over here because this economy in Miami, or in Dade County.
You live in a very high cost of living area, that's for sure.
So people are likely saying bottle rocket or toilet paper.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean that there may be something to that. There may be something to that, but I mean, I I really can't speak to it because here, like I said, they started lighting them off 2 days before, and then the day after also. It's
Right.
like, oh, we found this in the back seat. Oh, okay, let's light it off. All right, but they started at like 3, 4 in the afternoon before it was even thinking about getting dark here, and went to just a little after midnight. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking like 10, maybe 15 minutes after midnight, and you could hear it start tapering down about 11:30, and then after midnight there was maybe 10 minutes after there was one last boom, and then that was it for the night.
Yeah.
You know. But I mean, I'm serious when I say podunk. We don't even have sidewalks to roll up at night. I mean, it's that rural out here, but that's okay. I mean, we like it. It's quiet.
Yeah. It has its pros
So
and cons, but
yeah.
quiet is always good.
Now we live down in a valley, in a shadow valley, surrounded on all four sides by mountains. And one of the coolest Fourth of Julys we ever spent. In fact, I don't know. I don't think Linda was with me. I think that was when. I think that was after my first marriage and before I even met Linda. Went up in the mountains and we watched all the fireworks from up in the mountains, looking down into the valley, and that
That
was cool.
that's got to be cool.
That was real cool, especially if you look out away from the city, because nobody's lighting off fireworks right downtown. I mean, it's all the rural residential areas, and that was really cool. Now, have you flown many times at all?
Like 3 or 4 times.
But anytime, fly anytime they're like about fireworks, Fourth of
No,
July, New Year's, any kind of a celebration. Okay,
no.
that was really something to see. And I don't even remember where I was flying, but people were shooting off fireworks. It was weird to see fireworks under the airplane. It was
Interesting. Yeah.
it was really awesome to see.
Let me share this
Okay,
side note, which we were talking about earlier
okay,
in
okay.
the green room. So I, doing my research, I ran into a for years now. I knew of the existence of a page that does deep dive genealogy because they live in the Canary Islands, and they're researchers, and they go in and they take photographs of the old papers and whatnot, and this and that. And these people from the Canary Islands, it's funny because I'm related to these people, but like with DNA. So like the researchers, I'm cousins with them. But the problem is, and I know how, because of them, because I followed their trail. But in the beginning, I couldn't understand what was going on because in the Canary Islands, the names sometimes switch, like the last names,
Right,
in weird ways that we're not used to. Even in the greater Spanish world, if you have a name of like Escajedo, Lindsay, whatever,
right.
it's that for the next generation in a general sense, unless there's some sort of situation. But in over here, there's switch on, and that's because early on in the Canary Islands, um, when the conquest started in the 1400s,
Mhm.
smack dab 1400. Um, the Crown of Castile, Spain, not Spain back then, but whatever,
Yeah,
gave it to the Franks to come over. So the Franks came over, but then they said, nah, screw that. The Portuguese had a chance, but the Vatican changed their mind. And so what ends up happening is the Castilians come in. There were people living there already,
right.
and they were indigenous people. Um, and they Christianized them.
Hmm.
After the conquest, it lasted 100 years. And so these people that had like native names were given Spanish names.
Okay.
So Hernandez, Jimenez, or whatever variation name, or just any combination of this and that. And sometimes even Indian or native, not Indian, these people aren't, well, they're indigenous.
Hmm.
These people are it's different than here in the Americas. They're more like so they're kind of they look similar to, or they did look similar to, generally speaking, Mediterranean people.
Okay.
Because they suggest that in like BC 1 BC to AD, the
Hmm.
Romans marooned them there, left them with,
Oh, okay.
and because like for some reason, who knows what, this is one of the suggestions.
Okay.
Other people suspect, what if they're Atlanteans, like, with all the,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different, how did they get there, because it's, in the ocean.
Sure.
And what it is that some of them were blonde,
Hmm.
blue-eyed blonde, others were tan,
Uh-huh.
um, but they had these very, and so they looked Mediterranean, like all the differences you see in
Yeah.
Mediterranean people. But how did they get there? Anyways, but they became Christianized. What it ends up being genetically is that these people are closest to North African indigenous native people.
Okay.
So people today, from anywhere from Morocco all the way
Okay.
across, they were the people similar to the people that were there
Right.
thousands and thousands of years ago. So
Okay.
somehow they made it over to the anyways, doing the research and following these people's paperwork, I'm related to a good amount, or at least so far, of indigenous Canary Islanders, Guanches, and it blew my mind.
Now,
It blew my mind.
Guanches is what the people are called, or is that a name?
The Guanches is the blanket name for them, but each
Okay.
tribe on each island was
Hmm.
a different name, but they just
Different.
blanket
Okay.
call them Guanches. It
Okay.
was mind blowing. It's still mind blowing because these people were not connected to Europe for over, or North Africa, or just anything for over, supposedly the assumptions are, according to the studies that they make, for over 1,000 some odd years back in history from the 1400s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a strange thing to think about, that they were
Hmm.
living there. And and by the way, one last thing. So these people, um, and they have a lot, like they're documented, at least at towards the end, not in the
Hmm.
beginning because nobody knew. But these people, not only did they live there, but there was also animal, like livestock
Hmm.
on the island. How did that get there? And they didn't know how to sail. And another thing was that the islands are called Canary Islands, but not because of the bird,
No, because of dog.
because of dogs. Yeah,
Canis.
canine.
Yes,
Canis.
that I knew. That I
Yeah.
knew.
So very, very interesting stuff. And so, anyways, they became part of the population
Hmm.
and mixed in. And so Christians married into them, and they married into Christians. And little by little, it just got watered. So in the 1400s, like in the late 1400s, I have indigenous people from the Canary Islands that wed into uh, Genovese people that are in my
Hmm.
Jewish. There were
Hmm.
Jews that escaped Spain that they've documented that are in my direct line. So I have
Wow.
officially, I know
Hmm.
that there's Jewish conversos,
Hmm.
converts in my tree. Just mind blowing. And
Yeah.
Portuguese, I have Portuguese as well.
And you have all these portfolio numbers and everything else, all the records of these people.
I've taken each portfolio, I've
Mm.
copied each one, put it into each person's folder, and added the description and the folios and whatnot, up to the point where I've done a lot, but and they've done a lot of work without me having to, other than doing the paper, like doing the
Yeah.
filing.
Hmm.
It's freaking, and this is all due to their efforts in doing that, and just the record keeping process that occurred due
Hmm.
to the Catholic Church, and the way they did the
Hmm.
system, how it was. So yeah, it was mind blowing. I mean,
And and when was this data set? Well, all this data. When was this put online so that you could discover it in your research? I mean, how long has it been sitting there waiting for you, or is this new?
no, it's been there for a while,
Hmm.
but so it's always been there for years, maybe since 2014 or so.
Hmm.
But what happened was that when I saw the information, I couldn't make heads or tail as to why surnames. Like, I didn't take it serious because I would see a surname that changed for the next generation, and I said, that's not how that works. Until I started reading and seeing, oh, wait a second, and that was recently.
Hmm.
So for a while, I only added the people that matched, which only took me into the 1800s and some into the 1700s.
Yeah.
Like bordering the 1600s, which is fine. That's a lot, but only in a couple of lines because the other ones, the names would switch. And I was like, well, how's that? That's not. It turns out that I had to do more reading and accept an issue that to me doesn't sound reasonable. But if
Right.
you read, then you understand, oh, yeah, well, some people were Jewish
Hmm.
and they didn't have that, they just took on, or some people were these Guancha people, or in some cases, if a father had a daughter and a son, he gave his daughter his mother's last name and he gave
Hmm.
his son his last name.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, uh, names were important to some people, but not important to others. I mean, I have
Yeah.
ancestors that went by different names in different eras, and their name changed as they became anglicized.
Hmm.
I talk about my great grandmother on my father's side. Her last name, her maiden name was Tetherow, which I traced back and discovered was an Anglicization of the Italian name Detero. It went from Detero to Detero to Tetherow, with a few other stops in between. But that happened over the course of about 100, 150 years, something like that, while they were over here in North America.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, I'm Italian. Yeah, partly Northern Italian, because we traced her family back to Northern Italy, which wasn't Italy at the time, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it our lineages and even our names go off in weird paths. It's
Yeah.
only through documentation, like you said, through the Catholic Church, that tradition is basically held fast.
Mhm.
And it was adopted by other cultures too, because uh, other than that, everything else was passed down verbally.
Yeah. And at some point, yeah, it becomes a little bit obscure. But it's an interest. So the surname thing is a very important thing because it anchors us to be able. But at some point, stuff like that you're saying is bound to happen because
Yeah.
it wasn't a priority like what we think it is
Hmm. Well,
today.
well,
So
not only that, but things change and things happen, like you're talking about. When you're talking about somebody being Christianized, converted to Christianity, and then given a Christian name, well, that whole family line, if it's not written down, is basically lost. And then as the language starts to kind of go away, that's lost as well.
yeah. Well, no, the
So,
language, they have certain words that are left,
mhm,
but these people didn't even have, there's no metal on the island.
mhm,
So they were basically in the Stone Age.
yeah,
All
yeah.
they did was they were like hunter gatherer type people. I mean, they
Mhm.
planted some crops,
Well, you
but
said there was livestock, but like what kind? Like goats, sheep, pigs,
yeah,
cattle?
which they used to clothe themselves as well. So
Mhm.
they would
Yeah.
they would there's some in the 15 late 1500s, an artist from somewhere in Europe, because people were fascinated,
Yeah.
because not only was there the issue of their appearance, which was now don't get me wrong, there were variations on each island. Some islands,
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of blonde people, and
Yeah.
because of that, some myths started to propagate that what if this is the ancient Atlantis, that they were just drop offs from some sort of the larger. So
Yeah.
they have those, and this has been going on for hundreds of years. These
Yeah.
these these curiosities, but it turned out when they did genetic studies
Mhm.
that these people are basically Mediterranean people, and the closest are they're closest to the pre Arab control of North Africa.
Yeah.
They're closest to those indigenous type people.
So,
So
as you said, kind of comparable to people like someone from Morocco or something like that.
yeah, today a person from Morocco or anyone from like Libya, like like just across the board there,
Mm-hmm.
um, has also close if they do a DNA test
Mm-hmm.
with ancient bones, they're likely to come up and have association with the
Okay.
Guanches. Um, just like so, a general Spanish person without connections to the Canary Islands may
Mm-hmm.
not show that. Um, I haven't seen that in my thing because it also gets watered down.
Yeah.
But I'll have to do further to investigate. See, but the further out you get from that, and so many ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
like your thing with the Italian, you may not end up with any Italian
Right.
leftovers
Right.
just because we keep going and then we get contributions from the people. So I'm overwhelmingly like Spanish,
I'm sure.
like Iberian, but the further out back we go, and that's because most of the relatives were Iberian, but the further out we go, you start getting all sorts
Yeah.
of different types of people. Maybe they came from France. I mean,
Well,
this case of native Canary Islanders is mind blowing because it's
yeah.
not like saying, oh well, someone in France, I have a French person, which is awesome too in its own right, but there's something kind of like almost fantastical. Maybe it's because I grew up playing D&D, or but
Yeah.
there's something kind of mystical about, but these are honest to goodness, just, it's an event. So mind blowing.
Dude, I've said it before and I'll say it again. You got to get yourself a passport and go over there. Go to these places.
That would be cool.
You got to go to these places. I mean, just in Santander alone, I know you'd like to meet your cousin. I know you'd like to walk the same streets that Mateo walked. I
Oh yeah.
know you'd like to go see the house.
Yeah.
What's left
Oh, yeah.
of the house.
Yeah.
Um,
But
you
still,
got
to stand there, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm here to tell you it's completely different. It is completely different being there. You can see all the photos and video in the world, but without those ambient sounds and smells, and just actually the sensory overload is sometimes just really something. It's
Yeah.
really something.
Yeah, you don't have the in-person experience
Mhm.
to know any different. It's like talking to someone about, that's never been to California, and me describing, I don't know, San Francisco to them.
Mhm.
You can have a good idea, but it's not the
Mhm.
same as sitting in some,
Well,
Chinese restaurant eating a nice hot bowl of, whatever.
and it's a way to do a intellect check as well, because as much as you think you know, when you get over there and you start experiencing it, you figure out how much you don't know. And it's kind of okay, I thought I knew what I was doing here. I don't know squat. Let me shut up and listen. That happened to me a lot over in Europe. I mean, I studied French in high school and this, that, and the other, but we got over to Paris and I was lost. I was that guy with a handful of coins holding it out for the dude to take what I hoped was the correct amount, because I couldn't understand what he was saying. Because it's one thing to learn a language, it's another thing to know a local dialect.
And also something that can be taken for granted, just that is
Mhm.
one, I would assume, and even this I'm assuming, one does not know how Americanized
Yes.
one's mindset is in ways that we're not aware.
Robin's with me. She says, yes, yes, and do a vlog when you get over there.
Eloy on his journey through Europe.
Yeah. I mean, walking through history. I would watch that in an instant. It's one thing to have a still picture of a place, but it's another thing entirely to go walking up there with or without a camera. It's another thing to go walking up there and say, holy cow, look at this.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's like, I mean, I've, from where I'm sitting,
Mhm.
I've done as much as, not as much, I could probably do more, but I've done as much. I've squeezed I've wrung this towel
Mhm.
as much as I could using the instruments that I have. So I've contacted for the past 10, 15 years, been in contact with my cousins from Spain.
Mhm.
um, they've obliged me and gone to the civil registries. We've had communication over the screen.
Mhm.
I've read through documents I couldn't even understand until I kept doing it and doing. I've done all that. I've wrung it as much as except going and physically being
Yeah.
there.
I'm in the same position with the UK. I mean, I would have to go over there because there is so much in their halls of records, for lack of a better phrase. There is so much that still is not digitized that they haven't gone through. There are
Yeah,
thousands and thousands of books and parchments and manuscripts that haven't been opened in hundreds of years.
yeah,
There is just so much. They have teams of people working on it, and it's going to be another 30, 40 years before they can even see daylight.
yeah. And in there has to be stuff that one would that would open up paths. But I've covered as far as I've been capable of. I've used the advantage of everything with the internet
Hmm.
as much as I've wrung it and wrung it and wrung it. I mean, I'm telling you, the towel
Yeah.
is, and yet, even with that said, then I come across a path like this. But it's weird because my notions have to shift too. Because um, if you start exploring your self idea of what one is, because so on the one hand, like in my case, I have these people from Cantabria, but then I have these people from Cuba, but
Hmm.
they happen to be Italian,
Hmm.
and yet uh, the ones that married into the Italians happen to be Cubans, according to my dad, long standing, meaning that they go back, but I have no information on them because Cuba's like a closed situation.
Yes.
So I have this one line that I can't. I know the Italian thing up until the documents that I have, and then I have a Malaga from southern Europe, southern Spain, which is different than the other places, but not.
Right.
But it is.
Hmm.
And then I have these Canary Island people, which is completely different than the other ones, even though
Yeah.
there's an associated link between them all, which is
Hmm.
the Spanish crown.
Yeah.
But these are different groups of people with similar but yet distinct. And so what happens is that, well, what there's not this singularity, and
Right.
it's sort of a, so what ends up happening, or at least the way in my mind is, that I'm like, well, it's like you can't quantify that in any singularity that's viable. Like you can't just,
Oh
you know
yeah.
what I'm saying? It's so
Yeah.
difficult to
It is. And so, it would take several months and it would take several lists of things to check on. But I mean, as much as we have on the internet, there is so much missing. For instance, let's say you go to a church over there and you're looking up one person and they say, "Oh no, that wouldn't be housed here because we didn't start until this time. That would be over at this church." But that church, they suffered a fire that didn't affect their records, but it burned down. So they were temporarily moved over to this church. I bet you they still have. So there's a lot of local folklore that just is not on the internet, and local news and local facts
yeah,
that just isn't there yet. So you may spend a ton of time checking the digital records of this one place only to find out they're 5 miles away and just haven't been put online yet. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
I
crazy.
discovered that in my family line because my great great grandfather was buried with what I later found out was his second wife. We had no record of a second marriage. His first wife is buried near the property where they settled when he became of age and bought some property. And his first wife was buried there, and he lived another 25 years after she passed. We had no record that he remarried. And there I find his grave with some other woman. And I'm like, what's going on here? Then traced back through it and found a marriage record, not through his name, through hers. So just weird things happen, but none of that was online. I had to physically see that,
Yeah.
you know.
And then trace what the heck's happening.
Mm-hmm. And I can't be the only person in the world to have goofy stuff like that happen.
No,
You know?
there. I mean, you're talking about just
Yeah, I mean, the odds are astronomical. So I would imagine it's more common than one would think.
yeah. But notice how time. So in our lifetime, we can, without any extra documentation, roughly
Mm-hmm.
say, oh well, my grandparents this and that, and my great grandparents. Some people may
Mm-hmm.
not know their great grandparent or their great grandparents, but they still have a bearing. In general, you have this three 3 to 4 people back that you can sort of. But when you're talking about 100, 200, three
Yeah.
hundred years, but when you think about your great grandfather or
Mm-hmm.
grandmother, they would have in general
Mm-hmm.
known their parents, obviously, in general,
Mm-hmm.
their grandparents, and that would push her understanding like 80 years
Right.
back or more. And if you do that 2 or 3 times, you're back into some serious old era.
Yeah.
um, but it's an amazing thing to think all that does just disappear, and like most people don't really, it doesn't seem like they know, so it's almost like we're starting fresh, pressing record and record every few generations. It's like
Yeah.
press record, and oh, this is how life is. And then some people get curious and might turn and look back, but because so many people weren't bothered doing any sort of
Mm-hmm.
conserving, living their life, because they have to get on with it, um,
Yeah.
you now find yourself missing whole eras that you just, how do you
Yeah.
go about that? And so that's the whole like detective work interesting thing. but
Exactly.
but boy,
And
we've
well,
lived for I mean, we've lived barely within our lifetime, not even into the
mm-hmm.
70s, 60. We have a time frame that we've lived, and back is like astronomical,
Well,
of what
and it's
could
and
be.
it's only within the last 20 to 25 years that people have started taking real advantage of all the things that all the resources available online. And
Yeah,
those resources only started to become available as people figured out how popular the topic was. I mean, it used to be, I'll give you a example, familysearch.org, which is run through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now you can go on their website and every record they have is scanned and it's up there in digital format. Used to be you could call the local temple and find out where the genealogy resource library was closest to you. They would tell you where. You could go there and look in their catalog. And if they had a copy of a microfilm or a microfiche or a book or a manuscript, you could make copies right there. If they didn't, they would order it from Salt Lake, have it sent to them. You could buy copies of it, and then they sent it back to Salt Lake.
yeah,
So you physically had to go there. And just to get one record might take 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Now you can go on and just type, tap, 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 and then cross reference a few names and places and census records and what have you. And boom, here's the person. Yeah, that's them.
yeah,
And then get a copy of that documentation. I mean, they have census books scanned in the full page. And then you read down, there's the name right there. Okay. And there's the wife, there's the kids, and all this other good stuff. So, all right, I know they lived in this county, in this township, in this state for this census. I mean, it's not much, but it's a big help. It'll help you place people
yeah.
and track that way. I mean, it's craziness.
There's a lot you could do sitting behind in your
Mhm.
chair.
Yeah.
behind a computer. There's a lot you could really get. I mean, and plus more people. A lot of people. Um, it's weird. So a lot of people that are doing this stuff like online, you get when you do the DNA test, you have cousin matches.
Right.
So these people are cousin matches because they're at one point cousins.
Hmm.
So in theory, not even in theory, in practice, it should be that one or two of their ancestors is shared with you at some
Hmm.
point. So one of your great grand, whatever the case.
MRCA, most recent common ancestor. Yeah.
But so there's somewhere that they fit and they may have all the answers possible, but they're just not developing their tree just enough. So there's a connection there. And so when you look at all these things, like I see a lot of possibilities,
Hmm.
but they don't get that just extra person to
Hmm.
clear up what the hell's going on.
Nope.
And so you end up like, okay, well, this is a dead end and yet
And
they're your cousin.
yeah, and we're stuck. There's a group of about 24 of us in the same line. We are cousins, and we know we're cousins. We accept the fact that we're cousin, and we all go back to one ancestor, and then we stop because we have no documentation any further back than that. There's lots of rumors, and there's lots of hearsay, and there's a lot of BS. But we have no documentation. It's just this person suddenly appears in Maryland in like 1704, something like 1709. But we can't go any further back with any certainty,
Yeah.
without going over to the UK, and that's, it's not in the cards. So I'm kind of in the same boat you're in.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
well,
oh, and just one last thing on this,
okay.
unless you have something else.
No.
Just one last thing. One of the because there's a lot of findings that just through this
Mhm.
canary. One of them I have, and it's not shocking if you think about it because there's so many ancestors back then. But I also have an Inquisition guy, a minister of the Spanish Inquisition, as
Yes.
my direct grandfather. Actually, I'll tell you exactly. I won't tell you exactly what because I didn't write it down, but
I
I'll tell
think you
you.
mentioned this to me before, but it because it
No,
sounds familiar. No?
no, I found this out recently. His name was Domingo Ramos Cancines, born in 1540, and he was a minister of the Inquisition. His
Okay.
wife was Maria de Vera.
Okay, no, I got that wrong. This was somebody who was, I want to say this was in Cantabria. Someone who was either in trouble with the law or was the law. Oh man, we have swapped so many stories, it all runs together for me now. I can't remember.
I can't think.
It,
Well, I can't think of it right now. What that scenario would have
it
been.
was a group of people that rebelled, part of a
Okay,
rebellion.
okay, but I didn't. Okay, so that I couldn't trace um, genealogically, other
Okay.
than we share the same. Since so down in Murcia
Mercy. Okay.
in the 1500s, there was a rebellion in a
Mhm.
town because they didn't have food and
Mhm.
the taxes were high. Doesn't that sound
Yeah.
familiar? And so the people rebelled and people were killed. They sent people to quell the protest, and a few of them were, or two or three of them were called Escajedo.
Uh-huh.
Because the
That's
Escajedo
what it was.
name is under 300 today,
Mhm.
there's no more than about 250 to 300 people that carry the name. So
Mhm.
everybody in theory is related. I know for the most part, the ones that I've counted the majority of them into my tree because we have connections and we're related with the same ancestors. But there's a few that I don't know if it's exactly related, but it's the only surname with just about 500 people, 300 people or so. So I'm saying that that guy, those people in the 1500s had the same surname. So
Right.
one way or the other, maybe they're related. But I can't trace it, so I
That
can't.
so when you started talking about the Inquisition priest, it started ringing those bells, and I thought, wait a minute, this is starting to sound familiar. Then it turns out, nope, it's
Yeah,
another direction.
yeah.
Okay, my mistake. My
But but
mistake.
but just as a final thing. So here's the thing: when people, this is just one of the things, and I said that in the video that I made, kind of in a soft way, because you don't want to freak people out. But so I
Mhm.
said, you know, people judge those of the past because we have a point of view, an
Yeah.
identity of who we are,
Mhm.
according to the family that we have, and maybe a nationality or any number of things.
Right.
But if I have, and it can't just be me. Now it could it's just me and a few and a certain amount of people that have those specific people.
Mhm.
But across the world, people have all sorts of combinations of people that you would not expect. So maybe you're British, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden you have some strange thing up there. But well, you have thousands of ancestors. But
Yeah.
so my point is, so how could I, if I have an Inquisition guy,
Mhm.
and I can't even say it like that. He's my direct great grandparent,
Mhm.
literally. But you have many of them. Um, I have an Inquisition guy. I have a Jewish converso guy, which
Mhm.
the two is like oil and water. The
Maybe, maybe not, but yeah.
no, they burnt Jews.
But it wasn't like every one of those priests was out there holding matches, ready to throw the.
No,
And
the Inquisition people, that's their job.
I understand that, but if the person did convert, it's like, okay. If they didn't convert, well, now we have a problem.
So yes, some people escaped the fire.
Right.
But what they did, basically, their job was to burn. I mean, but
Oh, understood. Yeah.
let's not leave the thing. The
Well,
point
yeah.
is this:
Hmm.
if you have an Inquisition guy,
Hmm.
which is opposed to the concept of a Jewish guy, I mean,
Hmm.
really opposed to it. You have indigenous people in
Hmm.
your tree. All these people
Hmm.
are in conflict in many ways, and yes, in some
Sure.
ways may not be in conflict. But if you have all these people, um, it's impossible to make proper judgment from the standpoint of me in 2003 as to a preference when you think about, well, which grandparent that gave me life was it, who are we going to knock because we don't like current day. So was it the Jewish guy? No, maybe the indigenous guy. You can't do it. Once you have
No, you
this
can't.
certain understanding, you realize that it's a plethora of people with different religious backgrounds, different nationalities, all sorts of things,
Sure.
combining so that you can exist. Um, and maybe some of those even hated each other. I mean, last thing I'll say, um, Sean Sheen, Martin Sheen.
Hmm.
Martin Sheen went to Galicia. So Martin Sheen is actually
Estevez. Yeah.
is Martin Estevez. Well,
Hmm.
he went to Galicia to do some genealogy, and like they did that genealogy thing, and it turns out that his X amount great grandfather was a judge that condemned his X amount great grandmother, which had no relation to each other back in the day, but
Hmm.
through a series of events, as the lines kept going, one of her great granddaughters married one of his great grand, and so the two lines that were opposed to
Yeah.
each other in that conflict
Yeah.
merged, and
Yes.
so yeah, so
And I was going to mention that because you said you had the converso and then you have the Inquisition guy. How many generations apart were they, though? And
um
location wise, where were they? I mean, how many hundreds of miles were they from
no,
each
they were
other?
in the same. This is
Or
no, this is
or
all.
were they, next door neighbors? I mean,
No, everything I'm telling you right now is only through. Okay, I didn't tell you this in the beginning. All this that I'm telling you right now,
hmm,
it has nothing to do with Cantabria, has nothing to do
hmm,
with Andalusia, has
hmm,
nothing to do with. It's just through one. This is one line of my great grandfather,
hmm,
on my mother's side, the one that came to Cuba from the Canary Islands. His mother
hmm,
going up that, and I have his mother on his birth certificate, his
hmm,
mother and his grandparents, through his mother and
hmm.
that genealogist from the Canary Islands. We share that same line, and
Okay.
that's how I hitched her. So this is only one line
Mhm.
out of the branches in
Out
like
of out of the thousands that come
right.
together to
So
make you, yeah. So yeah.
right. So I can't say. So it's like saying, hey,
Mhm.
I'm indigenous Canary. You can't say. It's like
And so
Warren, that lady Warren, whatever.
yeah,
When she
so
says,
we're all mutts. Basically,
yeah,
we're all mutts.
yeah. So this is just through
Linda
one line.
Linda just threw something I don't think I've ever heard her say. She says that's funny because the name Escovedo was familiar to her growing up.
It can't be unless you had Escovedo people around you.
I mean, well, she grew up in Southern California, so I mean,
It can't be.
there. Well, I mean, how can you say that? I mean, there's a
I
lot.
can
There
say
were
that because
people,
I've studied the thing.
but there were people from coming up from Mexico, coming up from South America and Central America all the time onto the West Coast.
No,
I mean, who's to say?
no. I've ad nauseum. I've now there is Escobedo.
Now, people also move back and forth.
No, no, no. Look, I can say this with relative confidence. There is a name called Escobedo with a B
Hmm.
that propagated wildly, and it happens to actually be from the same place in Santander.
Hmm.
And all you do is change a couple of the letters.
Hmm.
Escobedo and Escajedo
Hmm.
sound similar, and you
Hmm.
can even confuse them. And that did propagate. That name was very strong. But um, if you go online, and I've done more than just go online by a lot. But if you go online, I'm the only one that would be interested in this because it's just my surname. But there's no so if you go online, you'll see that there's like 300 or 400 people, even in the world, that carry the name.
She said, I didn't know them, but I heard their name from my friends.
Okay, there was a family in California. Like I've studied all the branches. So there was a. So I'll say it like this, since it was brought up, due to Spain propagating and exploring the Americas, starting in the 1500s,
Mm-hmm.
they began to populate the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a lot of territory.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime in the 15 somethings, um, there were escajados that did come over to Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they established themselves there.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the like the writing, the
Yeah,
birth certificates and whatnot.
you and I have talked about that, and because you were commenting on the different spellings,
Yeah,
ESCAG and J and even X.
yeah, it's all the
You
same name. It's just how they spelled. Well, those people that came to Mexico, um, so people never stopped coming to the Americas. But the
right?
problem is, so the name is rare. So like
Yeah.
the name, there's like 300 people with the darn name. So,
Mm-hmm.
but there were people that appeared in Texas and moved to, and I don't know that they carry the name, but they changed. It has to be the same name, but at the end it's an A. I don't know, but they moved to California, and I have found them in directories and whatnot, and it's a handful of people. I haven't been able to. I've tried to connect them. The name is just virtually the same, so it could be from a branch that went through Mexico. So that is. I'm not. All I'm saying is that if you go online and look, you'll see exactly what I mean. I mean, I'm talking about, but people kept coming. The name is rare. It's not like saying, let's say, Sanchez or Gomez. It just happens to be just for some reason or the other, ended up not propagate or the name change. Who knows what the story is?
Yeah.
But as a matter of course, there's very few. So if you have come across Escajedo, it's like you found gold.
Yeah.
Because they're nowhere. You
Yeah,
don't see them
it's not a
anywhere.
common name. It's not a common name. I had never heard it until you and I met.
No, but
So,
Escobedo
mhm.
is more propagated with
Well,
the B.
when you say that, it sounds familiar, but I've never met anybody with that name, and I can't really pinpoint and say, "Oh yeah, I've heard that name here." I mean, but then again, maybe I'm just projecting because I know you, and so when you use different versions of the name, you know,
I mean,
it sounds right. But I don't know. Escobedo does sound There's something familiar about it, but I
There's
couldn't
a
tell you.
musician called Alejandro Escobedo, and he does like acoustic rock stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there's many Escobedos. Um, the problem with these, just to say,
Mm-hmm.
paternally, where I come from, which is where I get my name, there was not a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were, but these were small villages.
Right.
Yes, there was a big city, Santander, but you had the plague, you had all these things, you had wars, you had this and that. You had small groupings of people, and these people. So it's not like,
Well,
it's not like vast oceans of people that I
yeah.
come from, and I do, but I'm saying in this case, for
Well,
some reason or another, the surname is minimal.
well, because they were more or less isolated. You had a huge ass mountain range on one side and an ocean on the other side. So they were
Yeah.
relatively unmolested and I won't say isolated, but relatively speaking, as opposed to somebody in Madrid, they were pretty isolated, you know. So
Look,
the name didn't really spread all that far.
well, it also so we'll find out more. So maybe, um, like we've always known that as a matter of fact, where exactly our ancestors came from, at least into the forgotten past,
Yeah.
because that's the only place you find that name. Yes, there's some, offshoots that went to Mexico and some to Peru, but they returned, the ones in
Mhm.
Peru and stuff. But we'll find out more when I get my YDNA thing back,
Ah,
to
okay.
see what pops up, because
Yeah.
who knows what we'll find in that stuff.
That's going to be a big one too. That's going to be a big one too. Okay, I've been sitting on this for a while. Dan, how are you out there in the chat? Howdy, Dan. He
Hey,
threw
Dan.
something at us. Thought of you guys the other day when I heard an odd phrase. Something like, that's the rub of it, or maybe what's the rub? Where does that come from? Now, I don't know if this was rhetorical or if you genuinely want to know, Dan, but that's a quote from Shakespeare, from Hamlet. Aye, that's the rub.
Oh, I thought that was
Meaning
from a masseuse.
meaning a difficult situation. Let me see here. Something that causes a difficulty or a problem.
I thought it was from
And
a 24-hour masseuse.
well, it basically, see, it's a misquotation from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Aye, there's the rub. It means that's where the problem is.
And yet it sounds almost like 1930s, 40s. What's the rub? Or some
Yeah,
some sort
it
of like,
does. It kind of sounds slangish, but
it does.
Shakespeare invented all kinds of words and put words together, invented words, some of them that we use today, some of them that we don't use today, some of them that kind of had a flash in the pan kind of a thing. But he was really good with insults. And I won't get into them because most of them are adult.
They don't know exactly, as far as I remember, who he
Oh,
was. Some
man.
people, some people. No, there's some serious.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen. There's some documentaries done by English people
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
There's one guy, I forget now, but since you brought him up, where they say that I think we talked about it one time maybe, but they say that Shakespeare, whoever he was,
Mm-hmm.
left clues in his literature, in sort of cryptic or crypto. I don't even know what you want it,
Cryptic.
like coded,
Mm-hmm.
as little like, but the brains that it takes to do what he did,
Yeah.
like the messages that he left within the writing, like let's say you read down like a crossword puzzle and it has clues and stuff, and then these British people went across England to the different places, and it's like a whole adventure in this video. I wish I could remember the darn. I'm sure we can find it, but if it's true what they say, and it didn't look like it's fake, It looked like it made sense, but then again, there's things that make sense that might not be. But it was convincing that this guy was using the name Shakespeare, they say, but he was really some duke or some earl or some something.
Francis Bacon.
Yeah, very intense.
Well, this has been going on for a couple of hundred years. Not as well, almost as far back as Shakespeare's time itself. It started a couple of. I'm going to get this wrong. I'm going to butcher it. It's either 100 or 200 years after Shakespeare's death that Shakespeare was this lowly peasant who could barely read, let alone write. How could he come up with these masterpieces? No, Shakespeare was the name that was taken by Sir Francis Bacon, and he was the real author of these plays. But he used a pen name and took on William Shakespeare, and that's just one of many theories on Shakespeare. And basically, what it comes down to is class versus class over there, their class system, not our economic class, but their social status. They could not have a commoner be successful. They could not have a commoner be successful. It had to have been somebody in the middle or upper classes who wrote these, because no commoner could ever come up with that. And some of these theorists have come right out and said that no commoner could have done this. And others have said, well, no, it's not about that. It's about his education or the lack thereof. And it's like, the people learn to read and write all the time, every day. So how can you make that blanket statement that a commoner couldn't have done this?
There's a lot of that.
So,
I talked to a British guy. My friend needed help,
mhm,
and he worked in this business. And he said, "Come with me. I'll get you lunch, and I'll get you some cashola for doing a day's work, and we'll have a trip of it."
mhm,
And I went with him, and there I met another guy who was working on the same job. It wasn't a big deal. It was a pretty simple job, but we had a
mhm,
great old time. And he was a British guy
mhm,
living in Miami, and we got along real great, and we talked a lot about music. Like, he
mhm.
brought up a lot of different bands and stuff, and we were just shooting the breeze in that. And somehow we ended up on the topic of, he said, "Well, yeah, I'm here in Miami. I'll never go back. Maybe for a visit."
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, why? Why is that?" And he says, "Well, um, over here," I'm paraphrasing.
Mhm.
He says, "Where your lot in life doesn't matter."
Mhm.
He said, "You can start off in any part of society and end up somewhere else. Over there," this was his thing, and I'm paraphrasing it, so I'm not,
Right.
doing it justice, but I'm giving you the gist of it. He
Mhm.
said, "Over there, if you're part of this group, you're part of that group, and that's it. You're that rung."
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Really?" And he says,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's how it is." He didn't say it begrudgingly.
Mhm.
He just said it as a matter of fact, and he just liked it over here because, and it's true over here. You don't know that the guy standing in front of you, that you're next to, looking at, I don't know, different types of electronic gear. He's in flip flops and a tank top. You have no idea that
Exactly.
he very well could be a huge corporation run,
Mhm.
CEO, or he could just be a regular. You don't know.
I can tell you a story of a car dealer down in Savannah, Georgia. Um, he walked outside, and there's this girl in, holy Levi's and a tank top looking at this car. And he kind of walked up to her, kind of sized her up a little bit, and decided she's looking at something way more than she can afford. And he did everything to kind of persuade her away from this car and over to a much cheaper model. And
Mhm.
she basically, okay, well, thanks very much. And she left. And another dealer, he went back inside. Another dealer said, well, did you make the sale? And no, she didn't have no money. She can't afford nothing. And he just kind of looked at him. He says, you don't know who that was, do you? And the first dealer kind of got a weird look on his face, says, no, said her daddy owns one of the biggest shipping companies in Savannah. She can buy any car she wants, write a personal check for it. Don't tell me you ran her away. He's like, oh my God, she didn't look like she could afford to buy lunch, let alone a car.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, you're right. You can't judge a book
No.
by its cover. And that's especially true with, I hate to say middle wealthy people. I've talked about the book several times. There was a book called The Millionaire Next Door, Stealth Millionaires. And the way they kept their net worth where it was by not spending money. On average, they drove a 5-year-old car. They dressed down. They didn't spend their money. They lived in a modest house. And that's how they kept their money and kept their net worth, was
Mm-hmm.
not spending it.
Yeah.
You know, a guy driving a Jag just means he has bigger car payments and bigger insurance payments. This guy's in a 5-year-old Buick. He don't care. It's transportation.
Yeah.
Never mind that he's got a 7-figure income, you know.
Yeah. You don't know.
You just don't know who you're messing with sometimes.
I mean, there's all different combinations. You could have a person, there's all sorts of combinations. You could have a person that's stupid wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't have an education. And when I mean by education, I mean manners,
Mm-hmm.
formalities, because that's a separate thing. It could be entwined, but you could have a rich person
Mm-hmm.
with very crappy manners,
Mm-hmm.
and it could be like, wow, this person, who the heck is this? This person's got, no. Or you could have a poor person with incredible manners and politeness and whatnot. And then there's just a whole host of combinations of things. So you
Yeah.
just really don't know,
No,
because everybody's a world unto themselves.
absolutely. And I got to tell you, I have made business decisions based on that. I was courted by a couple of mortgage brokers when I first got into real estate. They want to take you out to coffee and sit down and chat with you and pitch to you why you should bring your clients to them to get a home loan when you're representing buyers and this, that, and the other. And they tell you about all their programs and what kind of rates they offer and how they work with first time buyers or experienced buyers or things like that. And I had one mortgage broker who absolutely treated our waitress like trash.
Mm.
Nothing was right. He was very short with her, very curt. And in the end, he didn't leave a tip. I went over and I apologized to the waitress, gave her a tip, and I never sent a person to him. He lost my business based on how he treated somebody he perceived as beneath him. My logic being, if he's going to treat that server like that, how's he going to treat one of my clients who is a first time buyer, who may not have 20% to put down? How's he going to treat them? No, you lost my business.
Yeah.
And I will jump over you to get to a different mortgage broker. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful on both sides of the spectrum there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You don't treat people. But so, as far as things that money can't buy, you don't, there's things that your family passes down to you
Mm-hmm.
by your formation as you grow up.
Sure.
That doesn't, anything can influence something else, but it has nothing to do with money. It has all to do with upbringing and the acknowledgement of human. It just, you can't purchase that.
Nope. Respect is not something you can buy.
Yeah, those are things that are bestowed on you through your parents. And there's people that, even though they were taught one way, and even so, even people that were taught, so like, let's say people that didn't that were taught one way, but they are kind of rambunctious, and maybe they have like a bad air about them in terms of their attitude. you could still see those little glimmers of, oh yeah, they're not choosing to, but they were told that this isn't the right way.
Yeah.
You could sort of tell that, but there's people that are completely feral.
Oh yeah. Oh
Like
yeah. You see them in the
feral.
grocery stores all the time.
Just wild.
I mean, I avoid the breakfast cereal aisle like the plague. But I will admit to sneaking down the candy aisle to grab my peanut butter cups. So, what can I
Yeah.
say?
Well,
But oh yeah. But it's not just kids. You can't blame it all on kids. I mean, I see some adults, it's like, where's your mother?
yeah.
Where's your mother? Did your mother teach you that? You know, I
Um,
don't know.
let me tell
But
you this thing. I haven't told you this.
oh, okay.
Just an aside. It
Okay.
has nothing to do with manners, but it kind of does. Actually, it
Mm-hmm.
does. Months ago,
Mm-hmm.
when I go to the store, to the supermarket,
Mm-hmm.
I'd go to the meat section and I'd get my ground beef,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd go through the register, and then I'd get home. And one day, as I was getting ready to make my ground beef, I pulled the package out, and I saw a puncture in the in the meat
Mm-hmm.
through the plastic straight down in.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see that but maybe I missed it. But no,
Mm-hmm.
so I just carved around it and threw that out and ate the rest and whatever. Because you're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna go back driving and stuff. I mean, that's the risk you take. But I said, well, that's weird. Few weeks later, same thing. I and I noticed, and it happened a few times, and I'm like, what the hell's going? Am I putting it in the car wrong?
Mm-hmm.
What's it going? And I'm noticing. So I started thinking, well, every time this is happening, there's one lady that's the bagging lady.
Mm-hmm.
Could she be poking it as she's putting it in because she's one of these filthy pieces of crap people? And she's just grabbing the meat and poking it, like just like saying "screw you," just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Because there's people like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so every time this happens. But I don't have enough proof.
No.
But
it doesn't happen if you go to a different cashier. It's just that one cashier.
right, and to add to the mystery, when I say to myself, I'm going to the market and I'm going to pay attention to this, inevitably, I'm bouncing around looking at stuff and I
Forget. Yeah.
forget, and they just roll your butt out the door with the purchase. Like it's all prepared so that you can come in, purchase,
Mm-hmm.
and get out. So that's also a problem. Well, this last time, just a week ago, it was on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
The lady was there. I recognize her as the lady that I match to that happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That I can't prove. And I knew that the like I paid attention that there's no broken thing,
Mm-hmm.
plastic or whatnot. And I get home, sure enough, freaking, it looks like a thumb stuck right through the plastic. I said, you know what? I have the mind to really blow up right now because that's a very dangerous thing.
Well,
You're contempt. So I picked up the phone, and I'm not one to want to get people in trouble, so I did it in a different way. I said, "Can I speak with the manager?" Yeah, this is the manager. I said, "Let me listen to what I'm about to tell you." For the past, and I told him the story that I just told you in a shorter way, but concise.
mm-hmm.
And I said, that can become a very expensive little thing because anybody can get sick with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm telling you, this happened, and although I can't tell you for sure, it happens every time a certain cash bag person is there, and I was there today. And he says, "Okay, sir, we'll take care of it." Okay, and I hung up. So I didn't point the lady out and describe her because I really don't.
Yeah, I get it. You don't
I
have the
haven't,
proof to make the accusation, but it's pretty damn
but there's a lot there.
circumstantial there. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's just, and it's so imagine a person who knows where that thumb or finger, and she's poking it. It's true. You cook the meat. You don't eat it raw. But I'm sorry, no. And plus, the way food is expensive now,
Yeah.
no. Why should so?
Well,
I did the next best thing.
you are more than within your right to take it back. Go to the customer service counter and say, got this home, and look what I discovered here.
Mm-hmm. And it's not the
I'd
first time.
I'd like to exchange it and
Yeah.
just run over, get one yourself, then you put it in your bag and split,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but now you're driving your ass again, and the
well,
whole.
what's the priority to you? I mean, is it worth it? I could tell you grocery store stories like crazy. My father was 35 years in the business. I could tell you grocery store stories from both sides. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
was just reading Robin's thing. I was like, oh,
Yeah. Jim says unpack the bag before you leave and check.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Go to a different cashier.
let me address Jim's thing real quick. Yes, obviously, but like I said, the problem is you when you're in there and you're looking at stuff. I mean, remember they're badgering you with items and stuff, and you're thinking, and then and what I'm going to cook, and all the things that humans do. And so by the end of the whole little escapade, they've rolled your ass right through their whole system, and you're poorer for it. But you have a bag of, so you end up forgetting that bit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, I've got something to talk about. I heard on the radio and I said, this can't be right. So I went home and I looked it up. And you know me, I never go for one resource. Mm-hmm. And I found about 18 different sources that confirmed this. All over North America, and a couple overseas in UK. How often do you use the thumbs up like in a text or a private message or on somebody's Facebook status or what have you?
On Facebook, I do.
Yeah.
The like.
Okay.
The like and the like thing.
Okay.
But in a text to someone via phone or whatnot, never.
Okay. Well, Jim Dockerel has probably heard of this because this happened up in Canada, in Saskatchewan. All right. A Saskatchewan court has ruled that thumbs up emoji is just as valid as a signature on a contract. And he ordered a farmer to pay $61,000 for an unfulfilled contract. Let me get a little bit further into this, and you can see, we'll see where it goes. In a recent case, a recent case, the Court of King's Bench in the province of Saskatchewan, there was a grain buyer with Southwest Terminal sent a mass text message to clients in March of 2021 advertising that the company was looking to buy 86 tons of flax at, $17 per bushel. The buyer, whose first name is Kent, spoke with a farmer named Chris on the phone and texted a picture of the contract to deliver the flax in November, asking the farmer to please confirm the flax contract in that message. The farmer responded with a thumbs up emoji. Chris, the farmer, did not deliver the flax in November, and by that time, the prices for the crop had increased. Kent, the buyer, ended up suing for not fulfilling the contract. The argument was made that the emoji, the thumbs up emoji, indicated only that he had received the picture of the contract in the text message. So, what do you say to that?
I say that if this was a message on Facebook
Mhm.
that
Well, this was a text message on the phone, on their cell phones.
okay, but let me make the comparison.
Okay.
If this were a Facebook scenario,
Hmm.
um, and a thumbs up representing that you've authorized something or that you are entering into contract
Hmm.
just by a thing, um, sounds ridiculous to me. Even if the question is, are you down with purchasing this much by this date, and then a thumbs up is found, that person that gave the thumbs up is not liable, in my opinion.
Okay.
Now, in a private message on a phone and a thumbs up,
Hmm.
it still doesn't sound like it's sufficient.
Yeah, it doesn't sound kosher to me either.
No.
Okay, now the buyer pointed to previous contracts that were confirmed by text message and suggested that the emoji meant that Chris, the farmer, was agreeing to the terms of the contract. Farmer Chris said that that emoji indicated only that he had received the contract in the text message. Okay. The judge, who at one point used dictionary.com for the definition of the emoji, um, said that the court acknowledges that the thumbs up emoji is a non traditional means to sign a document. But nevertheless, under these circumstances, this was a valid way to convey the two purposes of a signature. So, at least in Canada, for now, the thumbs up counts as a signature.
Yeah, I think that that's I think okay. Without thinking it too much, I think it's stupid. I
I
think
do
it's
too.
such an over. Um, I think it leaves a lot of assumption. So, what if somebody writes a text, and what if he pressed the button by mistake? You can sign by mistake, but now you're really screwed because you have a paper document and then you decided to sign. So even if you, well, I didn't know I was signing that. There's no, but a thumb up
Mhm.
on a freaking phone. I don't know.
Now, digital signatures are used all the time. I would say, probably with the exception of the original contract in my real estate business, with the original contract, all original signatures witnessed by me and I signed along with them. And after that, if there was an amendment to the contract, a digital signature was okay.
Hmm.
But all parties had to agree to it. And some sellers didn't want digital signatures. They wanted physical signatures that the person hand wrote. And that's fine.
This is not the same thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But it had to have been a signature that all parties agreed to. And that had to be specifically written into the contract. That way, there wasn't a mistake. My
Hmm.
thumbs up meant that I received it, didn't mean that I agreed to it. Well, it's he said, she said. Because as Robin points out, um, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Um, there it is. You don't know who actually gave the thumbs up. There's no way that buyer knows for a fact that Farmer Chris's thumb is the one that actually sent that
But
message.
even yes, no, I agree. That's a perfectly. But even if you take your finger and start poking at the thumb thing, and it fills the screen with thumbs up and balloons and frickin'
Mm-hmm.
whatever confetti.
Mm-hmm.
um I guess we need more information of the specifics of the thing, because it could be, if he showed in previous things all he did was give a thumbs up,
Uh-huh.
for the application of this scenario, he made the argument that this is what we thought was happening and it didn't come to fruition. So I guess I could see how, but so there's no doubt a signature and a document should be the thing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. He texted a picture of the contract to deliver the flax in November, asking the farmer to please confirm the flax contract. He immediately responded with the thumbs up emoji, saying that he did that to indicate only that he had received the contract in the text message. Here's a direct quote from his affidavit. I deny that he accepted that thumbs up emoji as a digital signature of the incomplete contract. I did not have time to review the contract and merely wanted to indicate that I did receive his text message.
Well,
And but the judge did not agree and said, yes, this is a non-traditional signature. And he ordered the farmer, Chris, to pay $61,442 in damages for an unfulfilled contract.
well, it's one of those things. This is a really tough one. Plus we'd have to look at the whole thing, but it's a tough one. It's not a tough one. What are these people doing business with thumbs up anyhow, to begin with? It's stupid. Everybody for
Mhm.
hundreds and hundreds, not yesterday,
Mhm.
not turn of the century, they've been signing contracts into the
But,
forgettable past.
but that's the thing. They've been signing contracts. Now, digital signatures, yes, like Jim is talking about, digital signatures through VeriSign or other accredited companies. There's a couple out there. Um, those are accepted. This I can't speak to Canadian law, especially I can't speak to Saskatchewan law. I can only speak to the law that I know some of that affected me, and that was this has all the earmarks of a handshake deal, and handshake deals quite literally are worth the paper they're printed on, because it is flat out specific in the law. Anything not written in the contract is null and void. Any verbal promises made, any handshake deals are not defensible in court and are not legal and binding. It has to be specifically written into a contract.
Let me give you this variation. It has nothing to do with this, but there's potential in, I don't know, there's an association somewhere. Earlier today,
Mm-hmm.
my aunt, I was busy doing some stuff, and my aunt left me a message,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have, I was busy, and I quickly wrote her, and I wrote her in Spanish, practicing my Spanish. I wrote her in Spanish. Oh, I'll Tia, I'll call you back. I'm just finishing up some things, blah blah blah, and I sent it. And then I got a message, and I went to check.
Mm-hmm.
I had message, not my aunt, but my computer company thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it said, "This is an electronic response. Although we are currently learning Spanish, We are not. If you want to learn more, press 1. It replied. It recognized I was writing in Spanish.
Mhm,
It recognized it.
mhm.
It for one. It didn't know enough to, but it knew it was Spanish, and then it asked me to press 1 to go to the next thing, and so that's an easy way of getting, like, you could type, like, let's say you're in some sort of argument with someone,
Mhm.
and you press send, and you're sending it to your boss.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Ask anybody who works in an office. Maybe one of your relatives. This would be a good story when you get to, holiday dinner or something like that, because I think you said you have some relatives that work in offices. If anybody has ever accidentally sent an email to all users or reply all.
yeah.
I've heard some horror stories about that. Yeah.
The problem is that this whole thing scenario that you brought up, it's sort of, I don't know, man. There's something that paper trails is better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a
Yes.
formality in which, because if you send, hey Eloy, you want 100 100 I don't know, bits, that I,
Mm-hmm.
and then I give it a thumbs up, and that automatically, so basically what that means is that people have to learn to stop using thumbs up all
Yeah.
across the board. And the story,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
you ruined a simple enjoyable thing of giving a
Well,
thumbs up because of this.
yeah. Now I don't know how the Canadian court system work. I don't know if they have an appeal system like we have down here, but you can bet I would be appealing some judge saying, "Oh no, because of that thumbs up, you got to pay this buyer for $64,000." Not just no, hell no. I would be appealing that like you wouldn't believe.
No wonder Jim Dockrell never thumbs up my posts.
Yeah, really. That's why he never likes anything. And Steve back up here said, I guess I need to take back my thumbs up on this video. I don't want to be under contract. You sponsor us, so it's up to you. So, you know. So Jim Dockrell says, and now we know why we ignore Saskatchewan. Okay. I don't know nothing about that. From what I gather, Saskatchewan is kind of seen like it's seen as redneck the way we see some parts of the US as redneck. You know, I
But
don't
you know
know.
that
I don't know if
that's
that's
a,
true.
that's the sad thing about it, because there's this thing called Florida Man
Mm-hmm.
that's gotten traction, and
Uh-huh.
we're like, oh, it's Florida Man again, like
Nah.
doing stupid things. So it's kind of like that, sort of like, jumping off the trailer roof into a small little pool type
Yeah.
attitude thing. Well, but here's the thing, dude, about these. So you can't blanket state. I mean, it's fun to do, but you can't necessarily blanket statement all Floridians now because of one guy that decided to jump off a tall bridge into a
Oh,
shallow lake.
but dude, it's fun.
Right, but you see what I'm saying though.
I do.
Now
I do.
everybody now, so like Florida Man, and I've even had people, since they know that I live in Florida,
Mhm.
even throw that joke at me, and in my mind, it has no connection to me,
Mhm.
but you're damned by association. So all of a
Yeah.
sudden, now Florida Man, it's like the Tide Pod things that people were chewing on back in the day. So you get all these situations. So I mean, the judge, I can't speak to it. It doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah. It doesn't sound right to me either. And that's why I didn't believe it. I said, there ain't no way that could be right. Ain't no way that could be right. But so I came home and I kept thinking it to myself. Okay, I got to look this up. I got to look this up. And I looked it up. Boom. New York Post, New York Times, LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle Examiner, the Guardian over in the UK, the Sun over in the UK. I mean, it was all over the place, and virtually the same story. It was on Reuters. It was on the AP servers. I mean, it just everywhere, and it's like, what? Are you kidding me? This can't be. It appears to be.
Well, if word gets around, he may
Mm-hmm.
have made his money, But if word gets around, and I don't know all the specifics, but if word gets around, other people that do business with him
Mhm.
might think twice and say, well, you know what? You may have made your 60 thou, but you're
Mhm.
not doing business with me no more.
And Jim Dockrell said exactly that. I bet a lot of farmers are putting that buyer on their ignore list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that comes back to that whole what hill do you want to die on thing. Okay, maybe you won this time, but that's the last 64 grand you're going to get out of any farmer in this area.
Yeah.
So hope that lasts you for a while because you're going to be looking for a job.
Yeah.
You know,
See,
I
this is
mean,
what I'm talking about when I've said in the past. We may be speaking the same language,
mhm.
but every mind is a world unto themselves. Now, that doesn't account for sleaziness
Right.
because you can have proper misunderstandings, but then there's sleaziness. And now, I don't want to. The problem is with what you're saying, it's very complex because we all use the thumbs up. So it's basically we toss it. We do it. We use it more than French people greeting themselves with kisses.
Yeah.
We give out thumbs up like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like thinking, well, wait, maybe I shouldn't use the thumbs up so much because it's binding.
I use it to acknowledge the fact that I saw it. Okay. It doesn't really need a reply. I'm just letting you know that I got it. I'm
Yeah.
acknowledging that I received your message.
That's not my understanding. When you give me a thumbs up, it's an
Yeah.
acknowledgement on your part that you're giving me $60,000.
Well, go right on ahead.
No, but you see,
Let's see.
but you see when you say it out loud, how
Okay.
ridiculous it sounds, though.
The last thumbs up I gave you, we were talking about setting up the podcast for this recording, and you said, okay, I've just set it up. I didn't have anything to add, so I gave that a thumbs up.
Right, and that's $60,000.
But then you thumbs up me back in acknowledgement that you saw my thumbs up. So that's 64,000 to me. Then
No,
you said, see you then. And I said, yep, catch you then. Then you thumbs up me again.
no, but
So that's 128,000.
when you said see you then, that doesn't mean see you then. That actually means I'll forego all the money that you owe me, and I'm gonna return you a good hefty four grand.
Talk to my
So
lawyer.
this, but you see how you can't use an emoji.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't make sense. I guess it makes sense to them or to that judge in that context of that situation, but it's a very dangerous thing because that
It
means,
is.
yeah, that I don't like the idea. I
So
mean,
if
yeah,
you send that judge the eggplant emoji, can he get you for contempt of court?
that's no, actually, if it has that much weight, I mean, they are extensions of our reactions, but that's a big deal, Mark. It's
It
a
is.
stumper. It's a foot stomper because the
I,
implications are huge.
now,
Actually, it sounds
again,
stupid, but
again, I don't know anything about the Canadian court system. I really don't. Yes, and aren't you glad I'm not a lawyer, Jim?
I don't know why
Because
that we
my attitude is, if more than 3 people said you did it, that's good enough for me.
no. I don't know if I'm. I don't know if I'd be. I'm not. Well, first of all, I'm not a lawyer, but
Me
um,
either.
isn't it reasonable to think it's stupid? I mean, it's just
It
as
is.
reasonable. It's just as reasonable to say, well, you reacted to it, but
But here's my point. Things don't just go to court. There's a process involved in getting to court. Okay. And that comes down to two people talking and acknowledging this was a misunderstanding. Somebody has to decide, no, I'm going in deep on this to take it to court. So, we get back to that status in life. Now, I don't know anything about this buyer. I don't know, did he represent some other company who was on his tail about we need this 80,000 tons? and you haven't, so he's getting it from above. So he goes to the next level downhill, which is the seller who
Yeah.
said, I never agreed to your contract. You know, I just acknowledged receipt. So I don't know. This sets a bad precedent, and I
Mhm.
think that makes the case for clearer communication. Because if he
Yeah.
hadn't sent that thumbs up and said, "Okay, I got it. I'll review it later on tonight," the whole thing would have been avoided.
It would have been done. Yeah.
Because that's a declarative statement. Okay, I received it. I'll go through it tonight. You know,
Yeah, but there should be. That's why paperwork is the standard.
and
Even
that
if it's digital,
yes,
even if it's digital, you have a process. Like for instance, when you buy something,
hmm
you have to use your credit card.
hmm
So now it would have been different if he would have paid online
hmm
for it, because now he's putting the money down. But just a thumbs up? No, I don't think
yeah.
so.
Well, and
I don't.
nothing else was filled out on the contract.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He never put in his name. He never agreed to how many tons. He never agreed on a price. Usually there's blanks that you have to initial, then a signature date. Some have
Yeah,
a witness, some don't need a witness, some want notarized signatures. A thumbs up, that's going to replace Facebook is now replacing a notary, or a
yeah,
text, server is now replacing a notary. Nah,
yeah. That's
something's
some
wrong there.
dumb. Yeah,
Uh, Again, I don't know the Canadian legal system, but you can bet this is going to go up to federal level. It'll undoubtedly have to go to um, provincial level, if that if indeed this wasn't already provincial level. I don't know how their court system works, but you can bet it's going to go up to the federal level. And if they agree with it, watch out. But it's going to be kind of fun to watch it play out in pop culture, because imagine, your 13-year-old girl who sends unicorns and stuff like this. I, rem- I, I remember text messages from my granddaughters. Those kids would have been in debt before they got out of junior high school,
mhm.
you know, with the emojis that they sent.
Yeah. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's stupid.
hmm
It sounds stupid. I don't know all the. It sounds stupid. The
Yeah.
decision to do that, like, I mean, even no.
We got a couple of stories here. Um, Jerry Brown, Polly Wants a Crafter, says his ex boss courtesy copied an entire client list, sent every person on the list to an infected server, and called me because everyone had thousands of emails. Her company was blacklisted and lost hundreds of clients. Ouch. Ouch. Oh, ouch. Let's see. Linda says, and the National Guard had somebody send out a Kohl's coupon scam to all users on the Guard email system. So every adjutant general and his staff in the country got a Kohl's scam email. She happened to be the information management officer. Her boss made her email an apology to every email that received it, personally, not copy and paste. It was glorious.
Wow.
Yeah, the military has its own little issues there. They call that corrective training.
Well, I mean, I bet you she learned her lesson,
I bet you she did.
because that's a whole lot of typing.
That's a bunch of typing. Okay, here we go. Jim says we do have appeals courts, and that can go all the way to the Supreme Court. So in that way, we have similarities. Okay, yeah, yeah, okay, probably be appealed. You can bet that'll be appealed, because I just don't see that standing. I really don't. I can see it being acknowledged as no, this is a misunderstanding. You interpreted a symbol one way, you intended it another way. It's a case of he said, she said. What do we have on paper? We have a blank contract. He did not accept the terms, obviously, or he would have sent you back a signed copy.
Unless in the past,
Mm-hmm.
There's a precedence of him thumbing it up and then paying. If he has
Well,
similar um, in
yeah,
the past,
yeah, there is no mention of that, but there is mention of other people. Let's see, let me find it here. Um,
because if there's a history of them doing it that way, that changes everything.
let's see here. Um, let's see. There was something else here. Yes. Kent, the buyer, pointed to previous contracts confirmed by text message, suggesting the emoji meant that the farmer Chris was agreeing to the terms of the contract. Now, it does not say that the farmer Chris is the one who confirmed contracts by text message. It just said there were previous contracts confirmed by text message. Well, confirming a contract and sending a thumbs up are two different things,
Yeah.
you know. And again, and that's why Oregon law anyway has that flat out in the law. If it isn't written into the contract and duly signed by both parties, it's not a contract. It's not
Right.
a legally binding contract.
Right, because anybody can weasel out or
Right.
whatever.
Exactly. Or promise you the moon and then not deliver. Say, well,
Exactly.
it's not in a contract.
Well, this has been settled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's little issues here and there, but
Sure.
it just whatever. It's so conflictive that it just sounds dumb to accept that as as a valid signature.
Yeah.
No.
Linda followed up with on your question. Eloy says it took her about 2 weeks to finish apologizing, and yes, she was that stupid. Well,
Wow.
I don't think I ever met the person that you're talking about, Linda, but I don't know. So,
She'll never forget that escapade.
well, you never can tell. I mean, some people are a couple French fries shy of a Happy Meal, but
Yeah.
you know, but that gets off on another tangent. Well, speaking of getting off on another tangent, are we about now? Jim asked a question up here before we decide whether we're gonna land the
Landed.
plane or not. Let me go find it up here. Come on now. Where is it? He said, I was unaware that July 4th was a statutory holiday for podcasters. Well, it's not. It is a federal holiday, it's a national holiday. But I'm the one that approached Eloy with the idea of not doing a Trampled episode last week. And it was simply out of practicality. I figured most people would be outside watching the fireworks about the time we got started and wouldn't want to sit here listening to us. So we would probably be talking to two people. So let's just take a rest. We don't do this all the time. You know.
Yeah. And
So,
we recharged our batteries to bring you this
Mhm.
excellent episode.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yep. So,
All right, so let's land this biplane.
okay.
All right, folks. So we thank you for hanging out. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. Your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. We have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Catch our past episodes over there by pressing the Wayback Machine button and downloading those episodes if you like. And we have a page on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, where we post our links and images of things we talk about throughout the episode. So be sure to check that out over there. And we're sponsored by
Harneal Media, the man, the myth, the legend. Steve, out here in the chat, riding shotgun over you yahoos out there, making sure ain't nobody doing a bunch of spamming and what have you. That's just one of the many, 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 many things he does. Steve is the man. And I say that with pride. Um, I'm proud to call him a friend. I'm proud to call him an associate. And I'm proud to call him the sponsor of the Trampled Underfoot podcast.com website. If you're thinking about looking into maybe getting a website, updating your website, upgrading your website, the only person I will ever recommend is Steve over at Harniel Media. Now, you can find a link to Harniel Media in every description of every Trampled Underfoot podcast show here on YouTube, and I strongly suggest you check it out. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot podcast.com. It works better when you unmute yourself.
Well, you guys be safe. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll catch you next time here, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. We're out of here. See ya.
See ya. Peace. In harmony. Awkward way.